What is going on, IVE Warriors? So today we have another article talking about intermittent fasting may be linked to binge eating behavior. Here's the study. Now, these studies here's the article, and they reference studies, and all of the studies that they reference, I've already gone through them, and some I've done videos on here, but I want to talk about this because this is a pet peeve of mine. For example, this is a data set that they took, and this article came out 3 days ago. This is a data set that they looked into. They're saying all of this, proponents of intermittent fasting, in which people limit the hours they eat, claim it can help with everything weight loss to brain health and longevity. While intermittent fasting may have some health benefits, though the science is still being teased apart, some experts are sounding the alarm about potential risk associated with the practice. Others have called into question whether purported benefits of intermittent fasting are markedly different from the benefits of other kinds of diets. Inverse spoke to the researchers about potential risk of intermittent fasting and who should definitely avoid the practice. Now, they look at intermittent fasting and the risk of disordered eating. Intermittent fasting usually falls under one of these four practices: alternate day fasting, modified alternate day fasting, periodic fasting, time restricted eating. Also, 1 meal a day falls into that as well, and 20 hours of fasting, 4 hours of eating. But in a recent study in the Journal of Appetite, it looked at more than 300 college students. This is important. And their eating behaviors. 23.5% of the study participants were currently practicing intermittent fasting. 16% had tried it in the past, and 61% had never done intermittent fasting at all. The research, so look at this. Less people have never, way more people, more than half, had never tried doing intermittent fasting at all. So, of course, the researchers found that the participants who had previously done intermittent fasting were most likely to have an episode of binge eating compared to those who had never done fasting before. Of course, because in a group of people, you might have, like, if somebody has a binge eating disorder, they're going to do things to lose weight, right? Or whatever their eating disorder is. Some people have an overeating disorder. Some people have a undereating disorder. So they're going to do things to lose weight. They are the ones that are likely to be at a caloric deficit, to just do a caloric deficit diet. They're the ones that are likely to do Weight Watchers. They're the ones that are likely to do an intervention like intermittent fasting to lose weight. Someone who had never done it, is a bigger pool of people that are more likely not to even care about weight loss because they didn't even do intermittent fasting. And this doesn't check to see if those 61% did other types of diets. They're going to probably have people who've done other diets and people who haven't, but the collective is if they've never done intermittent fasting, that means that they probably don't care about weight loss that much. They probably don't even pay attention when they eat their foods, right? Some people, they eat a certain amount and they don't really gain weight, so they're never going to think about doing a diet, regardless of what the diet is. This is not comparing intermittent fasting people with people who are doing strict caloric restriction diets. This is simply comparing intermittent fasting people with other intermittent fasting people and with people who don't do intermittent fasting. That's it. Of course, you're going to have people within groups of weight loss that have a disordered eating, people, because that's what they do. They look for stuff to lose weight, but that doesn't mean that intermittent fasting is the activator of eating disorders. Eating person who has an eating disorder is going to do every diet under the sun whenever they feel they need to do it because they want to lose weight. If your eating disorder is to undereat. Candidate Department Brain Science at Texas A&M. They told them that said both past fasters and current fasters were more likely to have an episode of binge eating than those who had never fasted. Past intermittent fasters averaged 3.2 episodes, and current IFers averaged 2.8 episodes. And they also say here, the participants currently practicing intermittent fasting tended to give themselves less unconditional permission to eat during their non-fasting windows. Of course, because they're trying to stick to the diet. Even if you're not somebody who has an eating disorder, you're trying to stick to your diet, because the best way to break a rhythm and flow in a habit is to just have all these moments where you break what you're doing. You're going to get to it's going to take way longer for you to get to your goal. You're going to create moments of going in the opposite direction where you lose that rhythm, you lose that flow. So yeah, people are going to want to stick to their diets. Doesn't necessarily mean that they are they're binge eating, right? So of course, and both figures were statistically significant compared to people who had never practiced intermittent fasting, who averaged 1.8 binge eating episodes. So look, from the 61% of people who did not do intermittent fasting, of the 300 college students, 1.8 still had binge eating episodes. And this is from groups of people that more than likely a large group of them don't even care about exercise or weight loss or anything like that to begin with, and still there were 1.8 binge eating episodes. So if you don't look into the if you don't break it down even further, if you just focus on intermittent fasting, you're not going to get much information. Why is it 1.8 people within a group of people that are not doing intermittent fasting who have never done it? So you're binge eating, but you've never done intermittent fasting. So that right there is a indicator that intermittent fasting is not a activator for this stuff. You are probably already binge eating, or you have the potential to binge eat if you've done any type of diet. And here's the kicker: you gotta do an intervention if you haven't been losing weight. If you don't lose weight, and if you don't just normally, innately just lose weight or stay at a certain weight that you feel comfortable with, if you gain weight, you have to lose it. How do you lose the weight? You have to provide an intervention. What's an intervention? A diet. So there's literally it's almost like they're telling you, you can't even diet. Don't even diet, because then you have an eating disorder, which I think is ridiculous, because you do have to provide an intervention. Intuitive eating doesn't work. Unfortunately, intuitive eating does not work. Do you feel good? Does it make you stop thinking about dieting and all this stuff because you're now focusing on something completely different than weight loss and all of that stuff? Yeah. Does it actually work on a physiological perspective in terms of actually reducing body fat? No. It doesn't. It is the worst intervention of all of the interventions, and they put this through data to see like the results of all of the diets. It was like 400 diets, and intuitive eating was 400th, which is last out of all the every other diet under the sun was able to be way more effective in weight loss and body fat loss than intuitive eating. And then of course they double speak, right? So they'll say half of men, this one specifically, half of the men and women engaging I have reported engaging in at least one objective and subjective binge eating episodes over the past month. Alarmingly, around 25% of men engaging in IF endorse self-induced vomiting, which you should definitely not do, and that is definitely signs of binge eating disorder. But here's the thing: people who binge eat choose to do different diets, IF included. There's gonna be people that do caloric restriction. It's like if you look at people that do caloric restriction, you're gonna find people that binge eat and people that do self-induced vomiting, all that stuff, because it's part of, like, that's part of the disorder. They want to lose weight, so they're gonna do different diets. It's not just exclusive to IF. It's just weight loss. It's exclusive to weight loss. It's whatever gives them weight loss. If IF is a tool they want to use, they'll use IF. But that doesn't necessarily mean that IF creates a disorder. Every single thing can activate or increase the chances of your eating disorder. Even normal caloric restrictions, even if they did Weight Watchers, even if they did DASH diet, even if they did Mediterranean diet. It isn't exclusive to intermittent fasting. But for some reason, because the word fasting is in the title, they want to demonize it. They want to demonize it. So They say who should avoid it. They talk about, they'll say stuff here, right? Where it's like, oh, see where they talk about intermittent fasting. Oh, here we go. Inverse. Intermittent fasting can result in fatigue, low energy, lack of focus, and obviously hunger, but it can also lead to loss of muscle mass and delayed recovery if you are participating in any sort of activity, exercise, or sports. Intermittent fasting is also associated with decreased endurance, so anyone engaging in anaerobic exercise probably shouldn't be fasting. That is not true. That is literally like 1 or 2 studies that looked at people doing intermittent fasting, and they had the people that were doing intermittent fasting eat ad libitum, which means they could eat whatever they want and do whatever they want, while they controlled for the caloric restriction group and sometimes even controlled their physical activity. So they're like, oh, this is to show the free living, how it really is when it's free living versus a rigid system. But the rigid system where the person is doing resistance training while the other groups is all over the place, and they've been given no a hard and fast rule to do anything. Of course, there's going to be large groups of people that don't do resistance training, that don't eat an adequate amount of protein. Meanwhile, you've created an adequate amount of protein for the caloric restriction group. And then you compare those two and you see that there's a larger muscle loss in the intermittent fasting group. Of course, it's going to be. They didn't do resistance training. They're not eating an adequate amount of protein. And the group that you're comparing them to, you have them doing resistance training and you have them eating an adequate amount of protein. It's like, it's a no-brainer, guys. It's simply, there's a discrepancy in the things that they're actually doing that's causing a larger muscle loss for that group. But when protein is equated, and if protein is slightly elevated in the intermittent fasting group, as we've seen, they hold on to more lean mass and they build more lean mass than the caloric restriction group, showing that the intermittent fasting system itself isn't the thing that's making them lose the muscle versus the caloric restriction group. It's simply the fact that they are eating less protein than the caloric restriction group, or they're doing less resistance training, or both. But they love to manipulate the data to say this. And then the thing that I find funny is that they'll say something like that, and then you go down here and they'll talk about the study that was posted in the New England Journal of Medicine that tracked 2 groups of people for 12 months. One group with calorie restricted diet and the other was practicing intermittent fasting. The researchers found no significant difference between the groups in gains of body lean mass over 12-month period, adding there were no difference between the 2 groups' blood pressure, and both groups had comparable improvements in glucose, lipid levels, and insulin resistance. So which one is it? Which one is it? It's like on one breath, they'll say, oh, intermittent fasting, you'll lose more muscle. It won't be better than caloric restriction. You'll be tired. And then in another breath, they're like, well, you don't have to do intermittent fasting because it's the same as caloric restriction. You don't lose the muscle. You lose the same amount of body fat. It's the same thing for your glucose and lipid levels and insulin resistance. There's no difference. So why do intermittent fasting when you could just do caloric restriction? Make this your tool for binge eating. Don't make this your tool for binge eating. You see what I'm talking about? How they don't even notice that they are being biased in their own when they're communicating this stuff to you. They don't even notice that they're literally saying, oh, you'll lose more muscle with intermittent fasting. Plus, you shouldn't do it because it's the same thing as caloric restriction because you'll have the same amount of muscle. What are you saying? What are you saying? You just want to throw everything at the wall and see what sticks to hopefully just be counterculture with intermittent fasting. Because it's always cool to be counterculture. It was cool for intermittent fasting to come into the fray, but now it's cool to be counterculture. Because whenever you get to a point where something gets popular, if you go in the unpopular direction, you come off as a person who's like, oh, I'm thinking for myself, or I'm doing this, like I'm edgy because I'm going against the popular thing. Don't go against the popular thing. Don't go with the popular thing. Go with science. Go with the studies that we currently have, the meta-analysis, because those things will actually really tell you what's going on. But of course, intermittent fasting has the tag name fasting on it. Because it does, we will continue to get these articles, but I will continue to make videos against this because I want people to know Of course, there will be people that do intermittent fasting that have a binge eating disorder because they want to lose weight. If their disorder is to constantly lose weight, they're going to do all the stuff under the sun. They're not just going to do intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting has also not been shown to be an activator of eating disorder, meaning that people who didn't have a history of eating disorder did intermittent fasting and came out with an eating disorder. That has not been found in any study. What has been found is that people who have eating disorders are likely to have tried or done intermittent fasting. But also, what they don't tell you is that those people have also tried the Atkins diet, is that those people have also tried Mediterranean diet, is that those people have also tried just doing a caloric restriction. Because they try everything under the sun, but they want to take they want to isolate the intermittent fasting group and just, let's just talk about this to show how bad intermittent fasting is. But tell us all the other diets they've done in the past. The people who used to do intermittent fasting, who have a high eating disorder percentage, what are they doing? What are they doing now? Because they have a high eating disorder percentage. Why are they not just still doing intermittent fasting? Yeah, but you don't want to talk about that, because that starts to muddy the waters of what you're trying to do. The truth is, guys, of course, we're going to have people that have eating disorders do intermittent fasting. Of course we are, because every diet is going to have that because they want to lose weight. But to pretend that intermittent fasting is something that accentuates that more than any other diet or is an activator of that is simply misleading and disingenuous. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and end it there. By the way, we've already talked about this study here. The intermittent fasting group actually lost 3 pounds more of full-blown body fat as compared to the group, but because that wasn't numerically significant, they made it seem like it wasn't a big deal. But if you look at what 5 pounds of body fat looks like, and on the internet, just Google what 5 pounds of body fat looks like, it's like this much mass. So 3 pounds of body fat is like this much. So if you think about that, that's a lot. Even if, yes, it won't be like directly just from your stomach, but that is a lot to come out of your face, your arms. That's a lot of fat visually. But of course, it's all about the technical things to try to get you to think that intermittent fasting doesn't have a significant impact in your body fat loss as compared to caloric restriction, because body fat reducing at a higher rate is not a calories in versus calories out thing. Calories in versus calories out still matter, but your body does a lot of things internally to pull from different sources of energy. And intermittent fasting helps your body focus a lot of its calorie partitioning of what it pulls from your body fat specifically. So just wanted to add that. That's just an added caveat. Anyways, go ahead and end the video here. Hopefully this video was helpful for you guys. Of course, you know that I'm constantly going to be, my crusade is to make sure that you guys know exactly what is going on, even when articles like this come out that try to get you to doubt yourself. Until the next one, guys, peace out.